You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Knezick.
Welcome back to The Buzz, brought to you by the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Chismar.
And I am Tom Knezick, and this is episode 65. Today we are drinking on the job.
Woo! That's my favorite kind of day.
Yeah.
Favorite kind of work day.
So yeah, our boss is on vacation, so she's out of the office.
Yeah.
Also my mom, but our boss.
Yeah.
But no, so a couple episodes ago I said how I was making a black cherry cordial, a wild black cherry cordial, which I collected the fruit off of some trees in the hedgerow right in front of my house. I let it ferment. Basically, it was just that, some water and the berries, some water, and then a little bit of sugar to cut down on the bitterness.
Okay.
Let it ferment for about 8 days, I think.
All right.
And then strained out all the solids and put it in a bottle and then put it in the fridge, and here we are.
All right. I can't wait.
So this is our live taste test.
So.
A little cheers across the table here, and
Cheers. All right.
and I'm actually drinking out of a North Creek mug that we got at that thing we went to a couple.
Oh, that their 30th anniversary.
That's right. Yeah, it says it right on the mug. 30 years of rooting your success.
And I have a Love Philadelphia mug. So, all right. Cheers.
All right.
Oh, here we go.
It smells alcoholic. I don't think it's very strong.
No, it's like it's very good, actually. I'm trying to think, like it kind of reminds you, like I wanted to say cough syrup, but that makes it sound bad.
Have some more.
Yeah, I'm gonna have some more. Actually, yeah, I want another sip too.
Yeah, it's
I didn't really smell the alcohol until it got close to my lips.
Yeah, and that was honestly when I opened it up I bottled it on day 8. And I smelled it. I'm like, ooh, that's a little bit boozier than I thought it was gonna smell, but it doesn't taste that way.
It does remind me of. I know we've talked about this on numerous episodes. The Frank's Black Cherry Wishniak soda.
Mm-hmm.
It does have that very similar taste, except it's not carbonated.
Yeah, and what was interesting is and maybe this is part of the refrigeration process. I do see a couple bubbles in there. When I had it, before I bottled it, it was really bubbly.
Oh, was it real?
Super bubbly. And that was like part of the recipe. So maybe, you got to keep it refrigerated or it'll keep fermenting. And then it'll eventually go bad.
Okay.
So
this is going to be a really good podcast today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I have no clue what the strength of this is. I don't think it's very high. But,
no, I would imagine, I have no idea.
Like I said, I have no clue.
At least you did put some ice in. So
I put a little ice in, and we only filled up the glass. I don't know, maybe an inch from
the bottom. I'm gonna say like this much.
But we also have the bottle right here. If we want some more, we can.
All right, you know what? We'll see how it goes. It's either gonna be a really quick and loose podcast, or it's gonna be a long rambling mess. So.
But no, it was a fun experiment, though. It's
I'm really good, Tom.
I've really gotten into just fermenting foods. I started watching a YouTube series called It's Alive with Brad Leone, which is put out by Bon Appetit. And then I was like, wow, why am I not doing this? I enjoy cooking. I enjoy making new things. So I've done the hot sauce we've talked about. That's a fermented hot sauce.
That's everyone.
I've done fermented red onions too, which I put on sandwiches, and they're awesome.
Everyone that I've shared your hot sauce with has loved it.
Yeah.
It's we're all waiting for the next.
So yeah, now I'm looking at fermenting. I wanted to ferment what is it? Milkweed shoots, like asparagus. I wanted to ferment them, but I forgot, and now it's way too late.
Yeah.
So
I'm enjoying this. I'm thinking it like, all right, I need to pace myself. Like I'm like, this is really good. I'm gonna have another sip. And I was like, oh, I've had a bunch of sips already.
But no, it came out really good. It has that. If you've been around a black cherry, you can tell that bitterness.
Yeah.
If you just scratch it and smell it, you can smell it smells almost like bitter almond, and you can taste a little bit of that.
It's not extremely tart.
Sugar.
It's sweet.
Yeah.
It's sweet with a tad of tartness.
Yes. Yeah.
It's really good. That's
so
really
I'm gonna make some more. My wife was even saying that she's like, oh, if you fermented that long enough, would it turn into vinegar? Which I guess it would, but I'm gonna try and see if there's we bought a bottle of the hickory oil from Samuel Thayer when we had him on right after I bought that, and that is like really good on a salad. And I'm like, oh, if we had black cherry vinegar and hickory nut oil, that's like a little native plant salad dressing.
I like that.
Yeah, so that might be my next experiment. But
so I want you to tell the story that you told me right before we started recording.
So I'll start off first. So my wife was like, you couldn't clarify why I know how to make prison hooch with my story. And so she was actually an educator in a youth correctional facility.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So she was joking around about the prison hooch, but she helped teach English to incarcerated youth.
Okay.
And actually she said it was like a really, really good experience for her, and not nearly as scary as you would think from not doing it. But no, so that's how she kind of knew how to, but she's always been interested in like the criminal justice system and just kind of life inside prisons and how they work and how to make lives more humane, I guess is a good way to put it. But that led me, I just happened to be talking about this with someone else at Crafts Creek Watershed, who was also on the podcast. They had a moth night at our farm last weekend, and I stopped by and just happened to be talking to a friend of mine, and then there's another person in the conversation. I was saying how I made this, and they're like, oh, I could probably get you a really good recipe from one of the inmates where I work. And I was like, he was actually a greenhouse teacher at another correctional facility, and he was joking around about how. So apparently I made prison hooch. Just didn't do it in a toilet tank. I did it in a jar on my counter.
Well, it's never tasted better.
Yeah, but it came out really good. I'm really happy with it, and I want to try some other stuff now. So
this is awesome.
Yeah,
and we're still alive.
Yeah. We're still alive after 10 minutes of.
Listen, I'm a real lightweight, and I haven't eaten anything. I'm actually like feeling it just a little.
I think you're making that up in your head.
No, I'm not. It probably has like no alcohol content.
Yeah, I like I said, it could be like 2%.
Yeah,
but it could be 5, 6, 7. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
But,
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we should move along. We went a little longer than we expected last week, or 2 weeks ago, but that's not a bad thing. It was still a good time.
It was productive.
So, but let's get into the plans that we are vibing with this week in That's Hot.
That's hot.
All right,
why don't you go first, since you have your notes on the page and I
do. So, sometimes I don't always get a chance to walk the nursery to see what's going on. We've been really busy lately, even though it's more of our slower time, but we have gardens all around the office. So I was taking a quick stroll around the office today, and one of the things that really stood out to me, and it's a plant I have at it's still my house technically for 2 more days, which is cutleaf coneflower. So Rudbeckia laciniata. And Rudbeckia, you think of your traditional black-eyed Susan or your orange coneflower, like garden plant, but cutleaf coneflower gives you a little bit different of a look. It has large yellow flowers, not as big as Maxima, but like where you get the petals starting to droop like echinacea, like coneflower. But it's got, instead of a black center, it's got a deep velvet brown center. Gets 4 to 6 foot tall, so it is on the tall side. It does stretch. It can flop, and it can be aggressive with underground shoots. So make sure wherever you're putting it, you're giving it space. And what I like to do, because it can get really tall and flop, is when it's about 2 feet tall, I'll whack it back to a foot. And it kind of just slows it down, keeps it more manageable. But the nice thing about it is most black-eyed Susans are upland plants, or facultative upland. This one is actually a facultative wetland. So it's found in floodplains and moist soils. And the one interesting fact I could find on it was the Cherokee would boil early spring leaves for food.
Interesting.
So I thought that was pretty interesting. Something that we could try easily at some point on the podcast, I thought. And it is a favorite of birds. So there's one right outside my office window. There's constantly goldfinch, things like that in it. So it's a wonderful plant. If you have the space, make sure you add it to your garden.
Yeah, this is a plant that just this year popped up in my garden at home.
Did it really?
Last year was Rudbeckia triloba, which is that brown-eyed Susan? I forget the common name.
I can't remember.
But really cool plant, easy cedar. didn't get a single one to come back this year, except in a random flower pot in my backyard that's nowhere near where they were last year.
Interesting.
Beside the point, but I have a Rudbeckia laciniata that popped up out of nowhere, and it towers over everything else that's around, and I'm like, where the heck did you come from? But yeah, I actually just outside your window there, I took a picture of, I think it's a really interesting looking fly that was on it yesterday too. That was pretty cool. And that was actually my backup plant, because I had a hunch that you were going to pick my first choice. And I was like, well, if he picks the first choice, then I'll use Rudbeckia laciniata, but you picked that one.
And what's interesting is my backup plant is your first choice. So we were on the same page today, but there are, I know with the Rudbeckia laciniata, there are some cultivars out there in the trade. I think one is Herbstone. So the center is a softer brown and is actually a much larger center to it. So it has a little bit more of an interesting contrast in the flower, but that one gets just as tall. It's just more of the look of the flower, but yeah, definitely check it out. I think it shouldn't be too hard to find. I would imagine.
Think so. No. And my choice was swamp rose mallow, which is Hibiscus machudis, and that's another one. I love to see it. You get these like wet margins on field edges, right when you're driving down the highway in South Jersey, even in ditches alongside the road, because it gets these like really, really big white flowers on it. Some of them are pink too.
Yeah, it does have that seedling variation where you could get anywhere from
which
white
I've
to
heard that the pink ones are perfectly fine. They're native, and I've also been told, I forget who told me, but they said that the pink ones are a cross. They crossbred with a non-native one. I haven't done the research to find out what's actually true. Or I did a little bit. I couldn't find anything to say that they crossbred. I've only found that they could be pink or white. But
yeah, I've always been taught that it's either pink or white and it's all seedling variation. But I don't know anything about crossbreeding.
Yeah, so it's another plant that can get pretty big. It grows really from like the southeastern US all the way up, I think, in New York State, maybe even further. And but it can get pretty tall. At the short end, they're going to be like 3 or 4 feet. I've seen them get taller than me. They're like 7 feet tall. Most of what I see is in that like 6 foot to 7 foot range. They get pretty big, and they'll get pretty wide too. It almost looks like a shrub when it's said and done, because they'll get pretty wide, and the stems get pretty woody as well.
It is a perennial, but a lot of specs will spec it as a larger size, almost as a shrub.
So it blooms from like mid to late July all the way into September. Like we said, the blooms are white to pink. Some of them are like even like that, like just off white, leaning towards pink too. Those are pretty cool. And then some are super bright pink. Tends to like it in wetter areas, but I've seen it growing, and we have one growing right in our front garden bed, and that's not wet at all. I just saw that there's a whole bunch that have bloomed in the seed dumping area. For the seed shaft dumping area behind our seed barn, which is right by my house, and that's not a wet area either. And so I guess they really can take some drier conditions, but they tend to really thrive in those like wet ditches, wet like field margins, those kind of areas.
I know we have it by the walking path all along there. Actually, by my house, so my property backs up to the New Jersey Turnpike, and there's 2 pipelines, like an easement. And they only mow that easement once a year. Some people that it's on their property, they'll mow it, but for the most part, it gets left alone. And it's on the other side of the road from my street, it's all hibiscus and fern, and it's just like a huge outcrop of hibiscus, and it's great and it's wetter. It's definitely on the wet side, but it's just nice to see big swaths of that.
Yeah, and it supports, I think, like 20 some kinds of insects, and I wanted to see if there was anything edible about it, because I know there's another hibiscus, which is where like the marshmallow came from, like what you put on some marshmallow.
I thought that was extinct at this point,
but yeah, I didn't look that up very much, but I want to see if this was edible. And I found a really unique I guess review of what it tasted like, and basically you can eat the leaves and the flowers, I guess, but it said they have a mild flavor and somewhat mucilaginous texture with a slight bitterness in the aftertaste. The leaves are rather bland and also mucilaginous. I think I'm saying that word right. But have a slight hairiness to them, which detracts a little from the pleasure of eating them, which I just think is very well written.
Yeah.
I think it's someone from the UK that wrote that.
Yeah. I don't think I'll be trying that one.
Just how they spelled flavor is with the U.
O-U.
Yeah, I figure that's nice. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm gonna try them either.
All right.
But
Awesome. I think that.
But it's a really neat plant, and you
is.
can use it. I wouldn't put it in a super dry area, but if you have a garden with like medium moist soils, go ahead.
Yeah.
Give it a shot. I think it would work well.
Again, it's a larger herbaceous plant, so I just like we talked about. There's lots of pinks and purples. And blue. It's nice to have that large white flower when you get it. It really stands out. So,
oh yeah. So with that, let's move on to this week's botany-based current events. Of course, we always make it a competition. Let's move along to this or that.
You can get with this, or you can get with that.
So the votes were huge this week.
But you got the result that many of you were asking for. You wanted to see what would happen.
All right.
When this happened.
The result is. It's a tie, 12-12 tie. So the funny thing was, I was hoping it wouldn't be a tie, only because, and I was teasing you about this last week, that I was winning 12-11, and the deciding vote was your wife. Your wife actually voted for me on that one.
Yeah,
and I thought that was
because, and admittedly, when I was talking, she makes a lot of our graphics, and she's looking at this. What am I supposed to make a graphic about? This article is all over the place, which it was, and I said that on the podcast too. It was all over the place. There was so much going on there. There was just so much awesome stuff going on.
It was a lot of great information. So we have a tie, and we really have never discussed. We never assumed or thought that this would happen. So I don't know how you want to break the tie. I was thinking rock, paper, scissors.
We were on the same wavelength again.
All right.
So
this is a familiar office thing where we'll just do like rock, paper, scissors.
I hear all the time there's these like random bouts of rock, paper, scissors going on.
So it just happens. That's how we settle our beef.
No, I haven't been.
No, you haven't been.
So I have to see. Are you doing like? There's the people who do the rock, paper, scissors, shoot, which is what I do, and then there's people who are wrong who do rock, paper, scissors, and shoot. Where did that come from?
My son was saying up in New York they do it completely different at his college. They add the and shoot, so it's rock, paper, scissors, and then shoot.
And is this a best of one or a best of three? Well, this is some great podcasting going on.
Let's do just one.
One for all the marbles.
All the marbles. So so it's rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
All right.
All right. Ready? Okay. Ready?
I got to get my hand high enough.
1, 2, 3.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. I win.
Tom
with
wins.
A rock. Rock versus scissors.
Rock beats scissors.
There we go.
Tom is the winner, 13-12 this week. Congratulations. So you get to pick.
I'm going to let you go first.
All right. So I do want to say I was really happy with the voting and that it was close. I thought it was 2 fantastic articles, and even though I lost that one, I'm happy to lose. There was a great turnout,
and I tend to like to just remind people what our articles were. So mine was on Professor Chris. Well, actually, it was Professor Chris Martin from Bucknell University and his one student who was from Philadelphia, and how they discovered a new plant, a rare bee, and then we're expanding. What just wrapped up was Black Botanist Week, so that was what that article keyed in on.
And mine was about a gentleman who was going through a certain section of Washington, D.C. and cataloging trees that were in danger of dying from invasive vines, which turned out to be a very large number. And it was a good study because it's one of those things that really hadn't been quantified before. So I thought 2 great articles. Everyone seemed to love both articles, and I had trouble choosing.
And there was people who wanted to vote for both, and I'll answer that question here. You cannot vote for both. I will never add that option because that's the cheater's way out.
And there is there's some backlash on Twitter because we're not allowing votes on Twitter, but they're heard and we appreciate it. It just doesn't factor into the overall final count.
If we had to go to Twitter and YouTube and Instagram and calculate all this stuff, we'd be here for longer than they were at the last presidential election.
And that's one of the perks of joining. There has to be some perks of joining the Facebook group. So that's one of the perks. You get to vote in the this or that. So Tom, you do get to pick this week if you would like to go first or second.
Like I said, I'm going to let you go first.
Okay, awesome. So my article this week is called "Solar Emerging as a Threat to Farm Preservation" by Philip Gruber, the news editor at Lancaster Farming. So this is really focused more on agriculture, but it does tie in, as far as I'm concerned, as far as land preservation.
Yeah. Definitely.
So again, I've highlighted a few paragraphs that I think sum it up very well instead of me.
Should I refill my drink before you start this, or?
Ooh, that's yeah. Go ahead, do it.
And we should note that this is. We started this podcast at 10:30, so we're really making a big sacrifice here for the listeners.
Yeah, I mean, typically I like to wait till at least my lunch break before I crack open the prison hooch, but I'm willing to make an exception for the love of plants.
Fran keeps a couple old milk jugs in his car filled with old limes that he got at Chipotle.
All right. In New Jersey, some projections have 70,000 or 80,000 acres being converted to solar by 2050. And the state only has 150,000 of top farming ground that is not preserved. With new wind and nuclear plants unlikely in the near future, New Jersey has been encouraging solar installations on roofs, landfills, parking lots, and other no-man lands. But those sites won't be enough to meet the state goals. For farmers, the pressure is going to be enormous. If there are no limits placed on utility-scale solar projects, it will consume all of the remaining really great land in New Jersey, said Susan Payne, Executive Director of New Jersey State Agriculture Development Committee. I mean, it's existential at that point. The Board of Public Utilities has so far blocked utility-scale solar projects on farms, but New Jersey's current incentive program is expiring. How the successor program is designed will determine how many cornfields will be converted to solar fields. Ideas include pushing solar projects towards marginal soils instead of top quality farmland and keeping solar out of the state's designated agricultural development areas. This is an area that has been getting so much public investment trying to secure the industry of agriculture. Do we really want large holes being blown in it? Another theory holds it shouldn't matter where the solar projects go as long as the amount of farmland loss is capped. So it's really, they're worried about losing farmland, but to me, it's a much larger, yes, that's food that feeds millions of people, but it also goes into our natural lands as well. And eventually, we've talked about this before, that it should be rooftops, it should be parking lots. And yes, it's a renewable energy that we need to figure out how to harness, but at what cost? And I feel that if they're going to take, because a lot of agricultural land does end up reverting back to natural lands, and I think if you lose that for solar, you're missing the point. I think you're making the wrong choice, because there's a ton of impervious pavement that it could be capped. Build it over highways. Build it, it's there's a lot of things I think that could be done, and instead we're taking good land with good soil still and going in the wrong direction with it. And I think it's going to hurt agriculture, but it's hurting a lot of other things as well.
Because it hurts everything that goes along with agriculture. And we have seen a push. There's more solar being done with pollinator plantings underneath. But really, it all boils down to cost. So it's a lot cheaper to build on farmland, which is basically undeveloped virgin ground. So it's really, really easy. All you got to do is level it and put the panels up. Just putting pollinator plants underneath, you have to raise those panels up from like 2 feet to 4 feet, and then put in a seed mix that's going to not grow over 4 feet. Because anything that gets up near those panels is, I guess, it's really at risk for. One of the things I've been told was it causes risk for fire if it gets into electric components at all.
Gotcha.
And then you get a fire, you burn everything up. And then it can also shade out the bottom of the panels if it gets too tall. So those are like two of the issues there. But yeah, it's when you put it over parking lot, you're putting up even higher. The cost just goes way up to do it. So I understand why they want to do it there. But it's the same things happening. We talked like probably a year ago about warehouse development also happening on farmland, and there's loopholes in the regulations where they want to incentivize people to build warehouses on in developed areas already. Something like there was an old warehouse there was an old factory there. We use that we're seeing it in Burlington County, where there was an old mall. Well, tear down the mall and put warehousing there. That makes sense because it's already used land
I
instead of virgin ground. So it would be nice to see that happen with solar panels. There's so many warehouses going up. It'd be nice to put them on top. But
I was gonna say,
what I've been told is it's so expensive that it's just way cheaper to do it on farmland. But they're using up a lot of the farmland in our area to do this.
Yeah, and I know it's not a road that you go down often, but a road parallel to mine, Gilbert Road, there's a huge solar array there. The old dairy farm across in Burlington, was it? I want to say Sunset Dairies or something like that. It was something very similar to that, but that's a huge solar array that was prime farm field, and I know it's more expensive, but you look at that solar field that cropped up on Gilbert's Road, and if you were to take those panels and put them on local rooftops for development, it was enough to cover one development, but it took up all this farmland that had much better uses.
Yeah.
And
it would just be, from our perspective, I think solar is a great outlet.
Yes.
It offers a lot of benefits. It would be nice to see it utilized in conjunction with some of these other things. But it's like I said, it's just it's cost prohibitive, so that's why they don't do it that way.
Like locally for us on all of the utility poles, like I know certain parts of the country, the utilities are underground. Ours, where we're at, still it's an older system, and the poles are run along the road, and there's solar panels on the poles where they face the sun, and I think that's a great start. I know there needs to be more of it, and I know we need to kind of move in that direction. I just don't think we need to sell everything to get there.
Yep. So. Yeah, there's got to be a cap on, but some of it comes down to what company owns the land, and like a lot of that's another thing that's probably unique to New Jersey is the landowners often aren't the farmers.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you'll actually get these development companies or prospecting companies that will buy up the farmland, rent it to the farmer, and then pull it out from under them when it's time to build what they want to build. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah. So that's it. I'm curious to hear your article.
So mine was just published on August 2nd in the National Review. And it was titled Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, which if you're following the news at all, this is what they're talking about because it is bipartisan somewhat. And they've really negotiated to a medium, I think. But this bipartisan infrastructure bill includes a $250 million funding dedicated for invasive plant programs. This is an article by Caroline Downey. And I hadn't heard of that too. I heard about the infrastructure bill, and I heard they were kind of quarreling back and forth, and that they reached somewhat of an agreement, at least when I last checked in. This was probably over the weekend. And I'll read a couple passages from this article. And so it starts: the bipartisan infrastructure package pending in the Senate allocates $250 million to the invasive plant elimination program, providing grants to states to clear invasive plant species that obstruct or line roads, highways, railroads, or other ground level transportation routes. According to the provisions language, $50 million for each of the fiscal years 2022 through 2026, totaling $250 million in taxpayer money, will be appropriated to execute the program. To be eligible to receive funds, states must submit an application detailing to their plans to eliminate or control existing invasive plants, or to prevent introduction of or encroachment by new invasive plants along and in areas adjacent to transportation corridor right-of-ways. Preferential treatment will be given to applicants that plan to replace the removed vegetation with native flowers and plants, including those that are pollinator friendly.
Oh, nice.
The bill's obscure earmark for state-level public landscaping project lends credibility to some Republicans' concerns that the Biden-backed infrastructure plan could degenerate into a wasteful legislative boondoggle. And I only included that last package because they use the word boondoggle.
Yeah, you gotta love boondoggle.
But no, it's great to see this happening, that it's getting recognized on a federal level.
Yes.
And then, in my opinion, that they're actually passing that money down to the states who have their own agendas for with invasive plants. You look at the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic in particular, the invasive plant pressure is ridiculously higher than anything out west. It's I've seen maps where it's like the red is bad and nothing is good, or green is good, and it's like the East Coast is just bright red, and then out west there you have some red patches around the cities, but other than that, it's not so bad. So it's nice that the states can kind of make their own plans. I guess the biggest issue is 250 million, and especially when it's $50 million a year, really isn't that much.
No, it's not. And here's my problem, and I think this is a great start. I really do. I would like to see legislation banning invasive plants, preventing it from making it worse, so that the work that you're doing, at least you can get ahead of it. But as long as you can still, someone sent me a bid yesterday to quote out, and it had barberry on it. It had burning bush on it. All these plants that in some states are banned and deemed invasive.
Big shout out to both South Carolina and Pennsylvania. South Carolina just banned the sale of Bradford pear. Nice. And I believe Pennsylvania either did or is going to ban the sale of Japanese barberry, except for cultivars that are proven to be sterile.
Yeah.
And they're saying that Bradford pear is on the chopping block next.
Nice.
So, which is a big step.
You can't just keep putting a Band-Aid on it. You have to prevent the injury from happening. So if we can do that along with this, that's fantastic. And I know that has to happen on a state level. I realize that, but I think we're moving in that direction. And this is a huge step. This is an incredible step that hopefully leads to more steps.
Just that it's getting recognized is a good thing.
Yeah.
I wish the number was a lot larger, but there was the big crux of the argument of this whole bill was the GOP wanted to be like $800 million, where the original bill that came out was at like $4 trillion. Did I say 800 million or billion? No, it's a lot. So they wanted 800 billion. That's a big difference.
It's a lot.
So 800 billion versus 4 trillion, and they negotiated down to about 1 trillion.
Yeah.
So there's only so much money there, and when you consider 250 million, that's only like a drop in the bucket for what they're total spending. It would be nice to see more money dedicated to this, because it is a major issue for quality of life, for transportation, for all kinds of things.
And we've talked about it. It's not like you can just buy a machine that removes invasives. It's a lot of hand work. It's a lot of field work. It's not an easy task. So maybe you can actually hire more people to get ahead of it and have a plan. And I'd love to see some of the invasive plant plans for this as
I'm hoping, and I would be pretty sure New Jersey is going to be submitting an application for this grant. I'm really hoping that we're one of the first to do that, because we have so many issues here, and I hope for you guys at home that your state's doing the same thing.
Yeah, wonderful. 2 wonderful articles. Again, I actually prefer yours over mine,
and I kind of prefer yours. So
wow. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see how we do.
Yeah.
Because
we voted for each other.
Yeah. So make sure we'll have this up today if you're listening on Friday for the in the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group. So make sure you go and vote, because.
And of course, the choice is yours.
All right. What do you want to do? Listener shout out?
Let's do a shout out.
All right.
Listener shout out.
Would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So, and I'm going to apologize, because I was, at least in my opinion, I was able to pronounce mucilaginous earlier, but I don't say my person's last name.
Metters?
It's either Metters or Meters. And that's my shout out goes to Rob Metters, whichever it is.
Yes.
Because he just shared a picture in our Facebook group of a new mural in Jersey City, New Jersey. And it is a giant Joe Pye weed.
Yeah, it's huge, and it's extremely visible. And the Joe Pye weed is native to Jersey City. But what was unique? I see you have it on the notes of what was unique about it.
Yeah. So the thing that was most unique, and I'm sure a good amount of people picked this out, but I don't know if everyone did. But the leaves are actually munched on. Yeah. So you can see like a caterpillar or something ate some of the leaves, and there's some holes in the leaves, which is what we keep saying, is these aren't there just to look pretty for us. They're there to look good and be habitat and food for the entire food web. So
I love that they brought the native footprint into the city to help raise awareness. It's someone, and Rob was saying someone very involved commissioned that.
Yes.
And
and I don't know how tall that building was. I did a quick count of the floors and I stopped after like 10, but it looked like a 30-story building that they had this draped on. So it's pretty cool.
It's huge. So that Rob, thank you for that. My listener shout out this week is Jennifer Cabrera, and she has been posting some great articles. She gave us some great suggestions of people who could come on to the podcast. And she has some great ideas. I really appreciate that. But mainly she votes for you. She was the vote that tied it. So I'm trying to some brownie points, get her to vote for me a little bit,
And I'll have to say, Jennifer, that Fran did have first choice on this listener shout outs. We have our script and he typed your name in that person because I was going to pick you. And I'm like, well, we can't both pick that person.
Yeah, I picked you first. I appreciate everything you do. And, if you happen to vote for me every now and then, it wouldn't be a bad thing. I'm just saying, just throwing it out there. Not saying I have ulterior motives. I'm just saying, along with all your great feedback and participation, if a vote fell my way, I would take it.
Yeah, this was a tough week to just pick one. There's so much feedback that we got, and there's so much good stuff. It was tricky just whittling it down to one, but we got a lot of episodes to pick more people.
I agree. So speaking of feedback, we got questions on the question and comment line.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want to have them answered immediately.
It's a simple question.
No, I didn't hear you. What was your question?
So we did get one question. When I play it, it's going to sound as if the message just gets cut off abruptly, and it's because the person started to give their phone number, and I wanted to make sure.
Surprisingly, we get that a lot, and
we do get that a lot,
which is nice. But we don't want to play it over the air.
Yeah, we don't want to make that and we do actually the service we use for the comment question and comment line. It does have caller ID, so we see your number as well, and we can text you back through the service as well. So, we'd rather not play your number. We don't want.
But then again, Fran, you did complain long ago that people didn't have good phone etiquette and didn't leave numbers and messages. So now you're kind of asking for both things.
You know what? You're right, and we just had this conversation again yesterday because, without sounding like I'm complaining, I don't want to turn this into a complaint. But one of the trends I've noticed is that when you get phone calls, like typically you'd be like, can I speak with this department, or I'm having this issue, can I speak with someone that can help me with this? That people just lead in with it. They're not even saying hello. They're just telling you this whole thing without knowing if you're the person that they even need to talk to. And it's like, when did that end? And I think people that I do deal with that say, can I speak with this person? Can I speak with this department? Are at my generation level. I just think it kind of, I don't know. It's, we talked about that when we were kids, you had a family phone. And if you had poor phone etiquette, your parents yelled at you. That's true. But now your parents don't hear you on the phone. So you have no one to guide you what it should be like on the phone, because you see who's calling you. And it's not, you didn't know who was calling. You picked it up and it was.
That's a good point. Because that was like, we got rid of our house phone. I guess we never really got rid of our house phone, but my parents just don't answer it anymore. But growing up, we always had a house phone, and that was, you're in the kitchen and the phone rings at dinner and you pick it up. You got a whole audience listening to your phone call. Now you can step outside, and you even told a story, a couple weeks ago, about how you'd like stretch the phone cord as far as you could around the corner. And then the better story is that your parents changed your phone number and didn't tell you for 2 months.
I was going to save that as a secret for later, but
I was like, that would make a really good secret. So I'm going to say it right now.
All right. You want to save it as a lead in for later?
Yeah, why don't you say we'll have a lead in for the next
one.
So
because today's your turn. So when we do episode 69, it's episode 69, I'll tell a story about my parents changing the phone number and not telling me about it.
67.
67. Okay. We're at 65, right?
65. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, man, I'm all confused. Are we really 65?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Someone
All right.
write in. Let us know.
Let us know what episode we're at. All right. All right. So I'm gonna play the question without any further conversation.
Hey, my name is Patrick Nemus. I'm from Hamilton, New Jersey. I was listening to the podcast, and I've been working with Hamilton Township to develop pollinator habitats on public property. And I was wondering if that's something you guys would do or work with Hamilton to do that. They got a grant to create new habitats, and I love listening to the podcast, so I wanted to reach out and see if potentially you would be able to work with Hamilton Township in developing these habitats, and the alternative, if you have any recommendations for native shrubs and wildlife that could work out in a habitat like that.
So, Patrick, that is a wonderful phone call. Thank you so much.
I think it's a great idea.
I do too. And I love that there's grants out there. I would love to know where they got the grant from, because I think it's great that they got a grant for that purpose and that they're working towards that. And Hamilton Township actually is a customer of ours. They have bought plants from us. So we would love to be able to supply plants towards this project, because the provenance would be correct. And we would have the correct native plants for the project. We have talked about on the podcast before. Unfortunately, we don't consult. And that's, as a wholesale business, so many of our customers are paid consultants. So for us to give that information away for free, we're kind of stealing work from our customers. And we've always found it a conflict of interest. But that aside, if you don't know where to go and you don't have the funds budgeted or the grant money budgeted to pay for a paid consultant, there are avenues that you can go to get help to develop these plans. So Tom and I were talking about it off the air beforehand, and was it last buzz that Michelle Backus called in, or 2 buzzes ago?
Yeah.
For your cooperative extension. So call Rutgers Cooperative Extension for the county you're in. I think Hamilton's Mercer County, I want to say. So call Mercer County Rutgers Cooperative Extension. I'm sure they'd be happy to help you generate a plan or put together a plant list for that thing. You can contact your local soil conservation district. They should have someone that can help, or maybe even help secure more grant money for projects like that. Kelly Gillum, the Xerces Society, I'm sure she would love to help.
And even if you don't contact them directly, they have so many resources online about how to do a lot of this stuff. A couple other ones I threw on there was, if regardless where you are in the country, you're either going to have a native plant society or a wild ones chapter. And a lot of them, they'll actually even have more local chapters to you that might have more specialized. And honestly, you might even have other people in your community who do those kind of things and are willing to either donate their time or enjoy just doing it as like a side thing where they don't charge anything. So there's some great inexpensive or free resources out there that you can consult to get that kind of information.
And they're happy to be involved, and they've mentioned it on the podcast. Kelly Gill has given out her email address, and Michelle Backus has called just saying, hey, this is what we do as cooperative extension. So make sure you take advantage of those resources to you, and you'll probably get better help than if I were to help you anyway.
Fran just drinks on the job and kicks his feet up, and that's about it.
That's what I do.
No, it's a great idea. It's a great question. It's one of the things we see a lot. I guess like NRCS is we mentioned soil conservation districts, but not the NRCS. But they do a lot of this kind of work on larger properties and like at farm scale. And but there's a big need for it to be at the residential scale. So to be able to put that in someplace so close to home for us is pretty cool. So
and I know Hamilton, and I think it's at Cougar Park, was a real big proponent early on of rain gardens, and they had used one of our Pinelands Nursery rain garden posters as signage to help educate what the garden was and what it was doing. And it's nice to see that they're continuing to move on with that and be progressive with that. So I think that's wonderful. So moving on to the topic, it's a topic without being a topic. Would you agree?
Yeah, we mentioned it before. We've been getting so much great feedback especially in regards to our last Buzz episode where we're talking about our favorite places to see native plants. We got a lot of people chime in with their favorite places to see native plants. So we want to cover that along with some of our omissions that we're like, oh, how did we miss that one?
No,
so
and yeah,
along with some other feedback we've gotten too.
Exactly. It warms my heart. Just the feedback from last episode, as soon as it went out, people were very happily to lend their opinion, and it was such great feedback. So the first one with our caller from last week that wanted to do work in what they thought was an unkept park next to them, Skip Burns mentioned that as he has started to get involved as a volunteer in park systems, that there may be a plan in place that you just don't see yet, or they just haven't started yet. They may be working with like trying to take care of a couple invasives, and you can't just assume that the land isn't just being taken care of, because that's what it looks like at first glance, so it is really good to go to the park system and find out how you can help and how you can be involved, just so you know what their plan is. And if they don't have a plan, then you can help move forward. But I thought that was great feedback, because that's something I hadn't even thought about.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Alyssa Joy Lewis, who's super active in the Facebook group, she gave us a whole list of things we can make wine out of.
And I started writing them down, and I immediately felt like Bubba from Forrest Gump, because it's like you can make elderberry wine, beach plum wine, chokeberry wine. But she mentioned she started researching. You can make wine out of most edible fruits. Pawpaw, serviceberry. There were a couple of, I think, prickly pear. All sound great. Now you and I have had pawpaw moonshine, which is phenomenal. But yeah, I would love to try beach plum wine. I think that sounds. I have had plum wine, American plum wine, which was Agatha's brother made it, and Agatha wasn't a huge fan. I loved it. It was phenomenal. I couldn't get enough of it, and I meant to bring it in, but I drank it all. I was going to share it.
Yeah,
but
that was when you brought up the pawpaw moonshine. Someone asked about it. I have like one swig in that bottle that I've been saving for like 2 years, just for like the perfect time, and hasn't struck me yet.
I think that was Richard McCoy. I think he was a little disappointed
right.
you didn't want to share with him.
Yeah. Well, I think he thought I made it. No, I don't have the recipe.
No,
it was a gift we got. Someone knew that we grew pawpaws, and they were in West Virginia, and at a liquor store, and I think it was an Appalachian Distillery in West Virginia made it, and they just happened to stop at a liquor store there and picked it up, and because they knew we grew pawpaws, and gave it to us as a Christmas gift, and that's a great Christmas gift.
Oh yeah. So speaking of Richard McCoy, he when we were talking about favorite places, it wasn't necessarily a particular place to him. It was the unexpected. So he was talking about a kayaking trip he had done with his family on a lake in Sussex County, New Jersey, and just happened to come across a big unexpected patch of buttonbush in the wild. That it's not something you see quite often, but when you see it, it's always a pleasure to space, especially when it's in bloom. So I thought that was, and he's right. Sometimes it's the unexpected is what makes it all worthwhile.
Going back to Alyssa, she had a really great idea that my wife even chimed in on and said, oh, this is something maybe we should do.
Okay.
And that was a lot of communities have like buy nothing groups now on Facebook.
Yeah.
And our garage is filled with stuff from buy nothing groups. But she was collecting seed from her property in her garden, putting it in little packets and labeling it, and putting it on her buy nothing groups. And I think she said she had like 10 or 15 packets of Baptisia australis that they went in like a matter of hours.
Wow.
And people just came and picked them up. And that's a great way to spread native plants.
Yeah. Especially if you're on a low budget.
Yeah. Inexpensively. It's a good way to share native plants with other people who may be interested in it but don't necessarily know what to get or where to get it, and really just kind of spread that. Like we keep saying, we need more people plant native plants. That's a great way to do it. If you have the seed and you're not using it and you're willing to give it away, man, why not?
Yeah, so that was a fantastic suggestion. Mark Million mentioned a park right in our backyard, which is the Rancocas Nature Center. And we did kind of incorporate that. For us, we incorporated that into Burlington County's parks. I know it was a standalone park at one time, And I don't know if it ran into funding issues, and Burlington County Parks kind of incorporated it in, but they do a ton of fantastic education. I know they helped Agatha Son with, like, he did his birding merit badge through Rancocas Nature Center, and they have a lot of really great programs. I know it is a great place. And it's somewhere kind of tucked in where this little patch of woods where you don't expect to see it. So great choice.
Yeah. And another one we kind of forgot was Cedar Run Wildlife Refuge, because I know they do a lot with native plants.
Yeah,
too.
and I that's somewhere we go actually.
Yeah,
and I do enjoy that.
But we got a bunch of feedback on Instagram, and I'm not reading anyone's handle because I can barely pronounce names. So you want me to decipher what these like random characters on a screen mean and how that's supposed to be pronounced? But some of the ones that most of these ended up being in our area too was Jenkins Arboretum, Stonelay, which is part of Villanova, I think. Or it's in Villanova, PA. You have Crystal Lake Park, which we've talked about a bunch of times. Great place to see some invasive plants.
Actually, I think someone shared, I think it was Bob Talon shared in the Facebook group an article just written about Crystal Lake because they were recipients of the Xerces Society pollinator habitat packages, and they're trying to turn Crystal Lake into a pollinator mecca. Which was wonderful to see.
You have Lord Sterling Park, which someone wrote in and said that's right outside of the Great Swamp. Natural Wildlife Refuge up in northern New Jersey. You had Bartram's Garden, Garden in the Woods, which we brought up with our last episode with I think Matt brought it up from Long Island Natives, and that's part of the Native Plant Trust. So that was like another just basically entire list that got brought up on Instagram.
That's a fantastic list. Fantastic.
So, and I'm sure there's way more. You start going out west and to the southeast and Midwest. There's all kinds of places that we just aren't familiar with. So, feel free to let us know where you like to go.
Yeah, we appreciate all the feedback. I love that we had so much feedback that was our topic. This week. So I have no complaints this week.
You kind of complained earlier.
Can you really count that if I didn't play the theme music?
but we do have a new segment that'll pop up every once in a while that doesn't have theme music. I'm going to try my hand at making some theme music, I think.
All right, awesome.
But so like 2 years from now we'll probably have something ready. But it's a segment I'm tentatively calling "Go Read a Book" or "Grow Read a Book."
I like that title. I saw that in the notes. Like Tom hadn't shared that with me beforehand. I just happened to read ahead and saw that he added it. I love that title.
And it's basically, I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks. I'm not reading it, I'm listening. But
when your son gets old enough, we're gonna record him saying "Grow Read a Book," and that's going to be the intro.
So but it's been funny to me. I'm not listening to a lot of necessarily plant books. I've listened to some, but
I was going to actually ask, when do you have time to read?
Well, that's why I'm listening, just because I'm doing other stuff, and I can kind of, there's so many books I want to read, I just don't have the time to read them. Well, now I can kind of multitask and listen instead of listening to music or something else. I can read or listen to a book and comprehend. I definitely don't comprehend it as well as if I read it, but
and that's why I've shied away from audiobooks because listen, when reading goes, I read painfully. Like I'm slow and I have to comprehend and visualize everything before I can turn the page. So it's like the audiobooks almost go too fast for me and I can't get a mental picture and I lose interest.
But I listen to a lot of books that are either about nature or history or a lot of my interests, and they kind of get on the fringe of talking about plants. So the first book I wanted to bring up for the first edition of the segment was one I just listened to, and it was 1491 by Charles C. Mann,
which I've heard of.
It came out originally in 2005. I listened to the updated version, which came out in 2016 or 2017.
Okay.
So there's a little bit more information and new information that had been included a decade later from his original publishing. But 1491 is a relevant date because everyone thinks 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue. That was when Christopher Columbus discovered America when he went to, well, I guess the island of Hispaniola, and did never actually touch foot in North America, but that's when it was discovered. Since then we've found out, well, there was Vikings that probably came over earlier. There may have been even discoveries from the Pacific side even well before that. So 1492 isn't necessarily when North America was discovered by Europeans or outsiders, but he basically wanted to paint a picture of this is what North and South America looked like at the time before European contact.
Okay.
And really what they found out and what he details in this book is Native American life is way, way older and much more advanced than we originally thought. They were saying, there's estimates that were saying is like as high as 40 million people lived in North and South America at some points. And you had these amazing cultures like the Incas, which were in Peru and Chile, and I guess Ecuador. You had what's the Aztecs, the Maya, the Olmec, all these cultures in South America, which if people came over the Bering Land Bridge, they would have thought taken a long time to get there. It probably happened a lot quicker than people originally thought. And then you have one of the largest cities in the world at one point was Cahokia, which is now where present day St. Louis, actually on the Illinois side. So, and that was like it was basically a giant farm community, but it was like tens of thousands of people lived there. So you really had these giant civilizations that were way more advanced than people thought. In fact, a lot of the agricultural technology that was found in Europe, like in the 14, 15, 1600s, a lot of that was actually discovered when they came to America and brought it back. Things like plows and that kind of stuff. The old way they had of doing it was way less advanced, even though they had some more technologically advanced materials. And then one of the things that always drives me nuts is so many of these traditional foods from the old world, from Europe, don't exist without discoveries from the new world. So everyone thinks when you think of Italy, you're thinking of pizza and pasta, all kind of rely on tomato sauce. Tomatoes were something from America. So that's something they didn't have at all up until really until Columbus came over, and that was 1492. There was no tomatoes in Europe until that point. Same thing with potatoes. You think of Irish culture, Polish culture, so heavily reliant on potatoes. They didn't have that. That was something from South America that they didn't have until it was brought to the New World. So yeah, a lot of these like old world foods don't exist without the discovery of or European discovery of North America. Corn as well was another one. And just a little deviation, all the genetic breeding that went into corn by Native American cultures, they had like a different kind of corn for every different practice. Like this was the corn you used for popping. This was the corn you used for making tortillas. This was the corn you used for soup. This was the corn. And they basically modified all these corn species or maize so that they fit the use that they wanted to have. Some of them were bigger and fluffier. Some of them were long. Some of them had less kernels. Some of them had more kernels. Really, really unique. They had like 40 or 50 different types of corn, I think. Wow. So, but the most, or two of the really big takeaways I had from this book that led more to plants and like land management was that everyone kind of knows that when Europeans came to North and South America, that part of the reason they were able to conquer it so easily was disease outbreaks. They were bringing different germs than were seen in North America. So you had like major die-offs of Native Americans from smallpox and as well as other things. I guess what people don't recognize as freely, unless they've read this book or saw the research, is that when we think of colonial times, and right when the English settlers really started to show up, that was still happening, but 95% of the Native American population had already died by that point. So these places they were showing up to that really seemed like there was sparsely inhabited by Native Americans, well, that's because 95% of the people were gone. If the population was accurate and it was 40 million people, you were left with 5% of that number at the very most. So, and that was really because of those first I don't want to say conquest, but first
Visitors,
introduction.
yeah.
So like when Columbus came over, that disease was introduced then. So it had hundreds of years to kill all those people, and it spread very quickly because these civilizations really traded quite a bit. There was, I'd mentioned Cahokia outside St. Louis. There was like obsidian from South America that was found there. There was stuff from all over the continent, and both continents, North and South America, that's found in the city because all the trade that happened between all these cultures. So that was one thing, is that when people showed up, the land they were getting to was missing 95% of the people that had used to be there. Those people were heavily agricultural and did a lot of land clearing and land management. So when we talked to Dr. Dwayne Estes with SGI, and they were saying a lot of the historical accounts talk about settlers coming in, and you had these almost savannas, not woods like we think of, but more savannas, where it was, you had like 20, 40, 50 feet between tree to tree. A lot of that was because Native Americans did that. And then now it was starting to regenerate into more. The land had been managed for like tens of thousands of years, not just when Europeans showed up. It wasn't like it was always like that. It had really been managed quite a bit. So to think that stuck out to me now, because think, okay, we can just let this go, just isn't gonna happen. It's been managed for not just for hundreds of years. It's literally been tens of thousands of years that humans have been managing this land through fire, through other means, through physical removal. We're going to have to keep doing that if we want to maintain it the way it is. The other thing that really stuck out to me was they talked about invasive plants in this book. And the best way to paint that picture was when European settlers first got to Kentucky, they were finding European bluegrass there.
Yeah, that says something, right?
So the first journeys to the New World had carried over invasive plants that they were finding hundreds of miles inland before humans had even gotten there.
Wow.
That says a lot.
That says a lot.
So,
that sounds like a fantastic book.
Yeah, it was
definitely
long.
Put that on my
it was, and I listened to it on like 1.5 speed, and it still took like 12 hours
really
to finish.
Wow.
It was a long book. But
all right, well, I'm gonna add that.
Yeah, if you're into history, especially like Native American culture, and kind of putting a twist on Native American culture, it was pretty unique. It really dives into like the Aztecs, the Inca, the Mayans, the Olmecs, and then Cahokia are probably some of the main talking points.
Awesome.
But,
well, now that I've made my move and I'm all settled and the house is sold, and by the time you're listening to this, it should be sold, I should have time to read. Like, I'm looking forward to digging back in. I'm gonna add this one to my list. Great. I love the segment.
Yeah, it's something I've been listening to a lot of these books. I listened to the Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wohlleben, and that's
another one on my list,
which is a pretty interesting book. And I listened to, there's another book, Gun, Germs, and Steel, which is kind of how Europeans came to North America, which I only listened to it because I remember as a kid, I saw it on my dad's nightstand and thought he had read it. And then I said, hey, I just listened to this book that you read like years and years ago. And he's like, oh, I never read that. My friend gave it to me. And I said it was too long. And I'm like, oh man, the only reason I listened to this is because you said, I thought you'd read it and it was something we could talk about.
Well, that's one you'll have to do in a future one.
And but I kept listening to these. I'm like, man, these would be cool to bring up on the podcast. I just don't know how to bring it up.
I like it.
And
I like this better than
a
complaint.
Yeah.
But now we got to keep reading books if you want to. You want to keep doing it. So you want to do a pod deck?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's see what we got.
Finish up my last swig here.
You know what? Cheers. I'm gonna finish mine, Joe. All right. Let's see what we got here. Yeah. That's for a guest. It says play Would You Rather with a guest. Questions I would ask a famous person on the podcast. Who would be your famous person wish list?
One of the ones we've talked about, like if we're talking conventional celebrities, not just our celebrities. Man, we've talked about having or trying to figure out how we can get Mark Ruffalo on.
That was I will say this. We looked into, I reached out to the publicist, but like a speaking engagement with Mark Ruffalo was what, like $100,000?
Something like that.
It was like $100,000.
He's getting that Hulk money.
Now, if that money is going strictly for his environmental projects, okay. You know, I understand, like, if that's how you're raising money is to talk about it, but it was kind of disheartening for me because I'm like, why wouldn't you want to spread a broader message?
Yeah.
Like, if you have the influence, you have your Hulk
Well,
money.
I don't know if it's necessarily for talking to people like us. That might be for come speak at our gala about the saving the, I don't know.
Well, they didn't reach back out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
another one would be Leonardo DiCaprio is doing a ton of stuff with global warming.
Yes.
So I think that would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
And there was one more. So, well, I don't want to say one of them because it's someone we're actually trying to figure out how to get them on. So
okay,
I'm talking about the ones that I don't think we'll ever get on.
We'll never get a Leonardo DiCaprio. But I would love to just know that transition of how you fell in love with the environment and why that was, everyone has a cause that they back, and there's always a personal reason why you get involved with one thing over another. But I would love to listen, if any of our listeners have any famous contacts that are environmentalists, that's my next goal. We got to get someone famous on this pod. Now we've had famous people in our industry, but I mean like mainstream celebrity, like on the podcast. Is that possible? Do you think we could ever do that?
Eventually someone will there's got to be some celebrity who, well, we reach out to.
We talked about Bette Midler.
I was going to say Bette Midler.
Yeah.
I've talked about who Bette Midler is. And then I was about to say Bette Midler, and I'm thinking, is she alive or dead?
Oh,
and I'm like, I just don't know enough about it. But I'm very confident she's alive.
She's alive. Yeah, she's alive.
Yeah.
But she would be a great person with all of her efforts. Here's the thing too. A lot of these people know enough that they want to help, and they hire the right people, then put in charge to make it happen, because they have busy careers as well, and maybe they're not as educated, but they get the right people to take care of this for them. So we've always been put in the right hands when talking with someone, but I would love to know from someone that doesn't need to help, that has other priorities, how they manage to make a difference and what their end goal is, and what the overall, how many of their peers have they converted to help in these types of missions. I would love that. So.
Yeah, I just did a quick Google search of like environmental celebrities, and I don't know a lot of them.
All right, throw some out.
So it's mostly more because I don't know celebrities. Okay. But first, number 1 and 2 were Leonardo DiCaprio and then Mark Ruffalo.
Okay.
Cate Blanchett.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Come on.
I'm not sure who that is.
Cate Blanchett was in Lord of the Rings.
No, I'm still drawing a blank.
All right.
So then you had Gisele Bundchen.
Wait. Cate Blanchett. Did you see Thor Ragnarok?
No.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
All right.
So, if we do this, this could be a whole nother episode.
All right. Well, you know who
celebrities Tom doesn't know.
Gisele
Bundchen is Tom Brady's wife.
Yeah.
Daryl Hannah.
Oh yeah. Come on, Splash. You never saw the movie Splash?
That's the one where someo's the mermaid and then the guy.
Yeah, she's the mermaid.
Okay.
And
I remember seeing
Tom
that
Hanks.
when I was a kid.
Tom Hanks.
Yeah, it was Tom Hanks. I have no clue. Al Gore. I know who Al Gore is.
You know who Al Gore is.
Adrian Griner.
I
who
feel like
think is the guy from Entourage. I think that's the main
character.
character.
I think yes.
I'm just looking at his face. I never really watched that show. Jack Johnson, who I know who that is.
Yeah.
And then the next guy I don't know at all. Barack Obama. No,
who's that?
And then Barack Obama and Elon Musk. Those were the. Okay. So I know most of them. I just didn't know a handful.
All right, so that's our short list for guests that we want to get on the show. So, you know what? Here's the thing. I would love to say what question. I know we talked about what led to their passion, and I'd love to know what their background was as a kid growing up, and if that is where their connection came to the environment. But a lot of our guests, we do a lot of research. There's a lot of questions we don't know we're going to ask until we really start diving deep, like a week or two before the show to know what we're going to ask. So I'd love to say I have these great questions already queued up, but I don't, because I didn't do my research, because I'm not sure that these people would ever be on our podcast.
Yeah.
So I think that was a pretty good show. I think we kept it pretty tight.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We're about an hour and 7 minutes.
All right, perfect.
Hour 6 minutes.
So with that, we want to thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed listening to The Buzz. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Native Plants Healthy Planet, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
We're going to give a huge thank you to RJ Comer, as always, for our Buzz theme music. Make sure you stream or buy RJ's music on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you consume your music. You can follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at Pinelands Nursery, and YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. We now have the question and comment line, as many of you have now found. Keep calling us at 215-346-6189. I will repeat, 215-346-6189. Ask a question or leave a comment. We'll play it on a future episode of The Buzz and answer it for you, or at least steer you in the right direction. And let's not forget the Facebook group. We're getting close to that 500 member mark, so I'm really excited about that. And it's been, like everything else, it goes in waves. It's busy, it's not busy. We're in that busy mode, which I love. Yep. So let's keep it going there.
Yeah. We now have shirts. Fran's wearing his. I'm not wearing mine. I'm wearing a
shirt.
Well,
is this
I'm
on? Can you buy the shirt
You
yet?
cannot buy that shirt yet.
All right. So I don't know if you can. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it here. That's a preview. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's not for sale yet. All right.
Yeah. That money, or you can find them right at www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. There's a banner right across the top that says something about t-shirts. Click that. It'll take you to the Teespring store. All the money that is generated off of that is going to a lot of the nonprofits that we're having on our podcast, and we're approaching our first donation amount. I said on the last Buzz, once we hit $500, we're going to pick someone to donate money to, or maybe multiples to donate money to. We are very, very close to that number. So we just need a couple more t-shirts to go, and then we're going to air who we're donating that money to.
Awesome. Buy t-shirts, push us over the edge so we can make that donation.
So you can listen to Native Plants Healthy Planet directly at www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. You can also check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, really wherever you consume your podcast. When you're there, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this with a friend. That really helps.
And three 5-star reviews this week alone. No comments, but the 5-star reviews, greatly appreciated. It makes a huge difference for us.
So, and today's secret,
it's your turn this week.
We kind of talked about Fran's, but he's going to save that one.
Yes.
Mine is something I've gotten really good at. I'm really good at going to trade shows.
Yeah.
And my particular skill at trade shows is finding the best pens. And I've become like a master, and I know who has good pens now.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, you do. You make quick work of it as well. Like you navigate it very well.
Even if people are in the booth, I'm able to go get pens, and I'll literally come back with like 40 pens. And I don't buy pens. We have pens in the office drawer to if you need a new pen, you go get pens. I haven't even touched that drawer. I go get these pens. I'm giving away pens because I have so many pens. I keep the best ones for myself, and then I share with everyone else.
I will say what I've noticed recently. So I'm a lefty, and I'm at the angle I write, I'm a pen wrecker.
Mhm.
Like I ruin, like very rarely, like pens just stop writing for me. And I found a pen probably like 15 years ago that I liked, that they actually stopped making. And your mom found a box of them on eBay, and I finally just worked through. So I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do? Now I have to go back to regular pens. The pen technology has improved so much over the last 15 years that every pen I've used since then, no issues.
Good.
No issues. So, but my thing when I do the trade shows, I don't go for the pens. I go for the unique things. Like there's always a lot of like water bottles, or there was one that was a fan that plugs into your iPhone, which I thought was really cool. Like that kind of sunglasses.
You know who usually has some really good stuff is O'Brien and Gear.
They have
some really unique things.
Stuff,
and then I'll give a couple shout outs to my favorite companies. So, right now I'm holding on to one that's from Cambridge Pacific, which is a seed packet company we actually use. And then some of the other ones is Ernst Seed has great.
They always have great giveaways.
Really good pens. Plant Detectives, which is what would you
they're
consider
a wholesale yard up in northwest
New Jersey.
Yeah.
And very simple pens. You look at it, you're going to say not a great pen. it's a quality pen.
All right.
And they have a ton of. They're purple, so they're hard to lose. One of my favorites, and it's not a company we use at all, but Winfield, which I think is a chemical company.
I think so.
They have some like really high end pens, and that's always a stop whenever we're at a trade show and they're there. I make sure I key in on them and take as many as I can. I've even like talked to the people. I'm like, we don't buy anything. Maybe your pens are great.
You have great pens.
That's what I'm here for.
Someone, I think it was GSK one year, gave out flasks. That was a great giveaway.
I can't remember. Someone was giving away the pencils with the herb seeds in it.
Yeah, instead of an eraser, there was a packet with seed in it.
Yeah,
and that was that Ernst? That wasn't Ernst.
No, because it's non-native seed. It's all herbs.
Okay.
And I've looked into making those with native plants. But they're really expensive to get your.
That
seeds
was a
in.
fabulous giveaway. It really was. I love that one because I got a whole box and it was like a whole set of herbs.
So the one guy, the guy didn't know what to do, and he put out the whole boxes unopened. It's for people to take, not thinking, I'm supposed to take these out of and put them in a little cup for people to take one. And I got a whole box. And
that was a fantastic.
Got a whole box. You get a box.
That was a banner herb year.
Yeah, and then he was out of pencils
pretty quick.
So no, that's just one of my unique skills. Is literally I get like 40 pens when there's times I have to pace myself because I'm like, I don't need to take all the pens.
Yeah.
If they have a pen, I don't need to take them. I need to get the good ones and then share with everyone else, or I'll just have too many pens.
I like it. I like it. Awesome secret. Yeah. So,
all right, that is it.
I think that's it. I think that wraps it up.
I was gonna say, Fran, aren't you supposed to say something?
Yeah, you gotta go first.
With that, we are wrapped up. Thanks, everyone. I'm Tom,
and I am Fran. Thank you again, everyone. We'll see you again next time for a Meet the Guest. Do we have it confirmed?
No.
Okay.
No, I wanted to ask you who we should have on.
All right. Well, we'll have that discussion off the air. So we'll see you next week for Meet the Guest. Until then, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.